On this video, I'm gonna give you a deeper look into my tournament at Sam Rayburn. We're gonna do this for every tournament this year, where we look at what happened, what went wrong, what we did right in a lot of instances, and a lot of the baits we use, and try to take a little bit deeper dive into the techniques that made the week, whatever it was, whether it was good or bad. So today's video is sponsored by Karl's Bait and Tackle. Everything that I'm going to talk about in this video, you guys can shop it at Karl's Bait and Tackle. Make sure that you sign up for Karl's Club membership. You can save 30% on all your tackle. You can get early access to a lot of products, including some of my signature products this year. You can get free shipping on just about everything that you buy from Karl's Bait and Tackle. And I promise you, they've got an assortment of everything from rods, reels, baits, crankbaits, soft plastics, you name it. If you can fish with it, Karl's Bait and Tackle probably has it on their website. Let me give you a little bit of background history of me and Sam Rayburn. I mentioned on the stage that like me and Sam Rayburn, we got this little wacky relationship where we don't get along.
So you're just one shy, man, of the limit today, bro?
Yeah, one shy and a whole bunch of weight shy was the biggest thing. When to forget the four, you just got to get the weight no matter how you can get it.
Absolutely.
I just, I never connected this week. You got to connect. You got to find your game, and I never really found
like the
my
lake.
water.
I fished there 3 years. This year was my third trip. My 2019 season, 2020 I fished a Bass Open there, and I finished this year all three the worst tournament finishes of that particular season. We ain't got a good relationship.
Why do I make things complicated? Why do I lose all my control?
Let's talk about the good first. I'm going to tell you the good things that happen from practice to the tournament. There is some good in the midst of all of this. I got little sayings that help bring me back to the ground. One of those sayings is, find my water. And I felt like I did that at Sam Rayburn. There's two things that I'm really, really good at. I have a lot of confidence at. One is fishing shallow. I feel like fishing shallow, I find things that other people overlook. I feel like I have confidence to fish behind people fishing shallow. I feel like there's baits and tools that I fish better shallow than anybody else. And so knowing that, I always look for the water that fits the things that I like the most. So anything that, like you saw me fish cypress trees. Oh, there was another one. I mean, a daggum good one too. That's a 5-pounder. That's literally a 5-pounder right there. Man, there's probably no more in here. And I just kept fishing around. So I found my water. When I was fishing the cypress trees, I was simply just throwing my signature worm that I designed for Z-Man around the cypress trees, throwing it up there, just letting it set until one got it. Very simple fishing. Not a lot to go in depth with here. See tree, throw worm at tree. Don't touch worm, let worm sink, feel bite, set hook. Simple as that, right? All right, so I felt good about that. My second thing is cranking. I found a couple of fish, I found a couple of areas that I felt really, really good about cranking in.
See that right there? Hadrila. That's the good stuff. Word on the street is there's not that much of it this year. So I guess I just happened to stumble up on one of the creeks that has a lot of it. There's definitely a lot here in this creek. You can see it out in the boats in 8 foot now, and it's all the way out here in 8 foot, but I've seen it as deep as 12 or 13 foot. You know, if there's grass there's got to be some bass somewhere.
I love throwing a crankbait. I love throwing a crankbait so much that I designed a signature rod with favorite just for cranking. I got a little bit of a bite going throwing a Magic Man 50, and I also was catching a few fish on a cliff banger 60. So it gets about 8 foot. I was throwing around hydrilla, caught a solid one doing that, and I caught 2 or 3 solid fish throwing the lipless bait as well. All right, so this is the second thing that or the last thing that I'm gonna give myself credit for, that I'm happy that it happened this way. Brian is navigating the river. Sam Rayburn's extremely hard to navigate, in my opinion. Nothing's marked. You just got to know that you can't run where you're not supposed to run, and you just got to know you can run where you want to run. And if you got balls, you just got to just run across stuff that you do, just stumps everywhere. It's probably the most dangerous lake that I've ever run. I like the fact that I stuck to my guns, I fished my strengths, I looked for the areas within the areas, and I took my time, and I was patient and didn't try to run somewhere that I didn't know. I idled it first, learned the path, and then I was able to navigate it really good in the tournament. So, bravo on that part.
This is, me and Sam Rayburn got a bad relationship. We need some counseling, because
Seminole, man.
3 times I've been here, and
All right, here comes the ugly. This is the ugly part. And you got to address this. You can't escape what you did wrong or how you can improve. And yes, this is a I did wrong. I don't, you know, sometimes we try to escape this by saying, well, I didn't know. Well, buddy, look, you got to know. It's your job to know. And so this is where I failed at Sam Rayburn, and that I'm definitely going to correct moving forward this year. Number 1, pre-practice. Right off the rip. Got to put the work in. Should have went down there and spent 3 or 4 or 5 days before the cutoff period. Would have saved myself a lot of trouble. I'm gonna tell you why. You only got 2 days of practice in the pro circuit. And with only 2 days, with 115,000 acres, you just can't see that much of the lake, all right? And it would have helped me tremendously on that second day. First day, I have no complaints. It would help me tremendously had I had an extra 5 brush piles I could run to that I'd found a month before. Doesn't matter if I found fish on them in practice, but just the fact that I could have found those in pre-practice and didn't have to go look for them. I had some waypoints. I could have said, man, look, on day 2, when I was struggling, couldn't catch any fish, and all my bait disappeared off my places, had I had 5 places that I could have run, 2 places, maybe just 1 place that I could have ran to, could have been the difference in $10,000. There can be a little bit of hesitancy to pre-practice, not out of laziness. It's just I don't want to overthink it. I honestly believe if we would have went out the second day, which I do believe they did make the right call by having the cancellation on the second day.
All right, again, in case you could not hear, anglers, we are in a holding pattern this morning. We're going to go out and evaluate lake conditions. I know everybody can feel the wind right now, no doubt about it. I appreciate your patience, and we'll be right back with you here in just a few moments.
So they did decide to call it today. Daniel went out on the main lake to see how bad the water was, how rough it was, and he called it a blow day. So basically what that means is we're not fishing today, we're going back to the house. So I do believe if we would have went out, perhaps it would have been different, but they didn't. And that's what you gotta prepare for, all right? So that was the number 1 mistake that I'm gonna say. Mistake number 2 that I think that I made and I need to improve on is making the lake smaller during practice. Okay, looking back on the second day, I really wish I would have turned around and fished in that river again on the second day. I had already found enough, but I just didn't trust it for some reason. I had already found enough fish and enough patterns on the first day of practice. What I needed to do was on the second day of practice, expand right there. I didn't need to go up the other river because you know how many bites I got on the second day of practice? 2. I went to see another river, another end of the lake that ended up being a waste. What if the second day of practice, I had already found a shallow bite that I feel like I could scratch out a couple. I'd already found a deep bite that I caught a lot of fish on the first day of practice. What if I would have just stayed out there, found 5 or 6 more deep spots? What I did was, once I found that deep spot, I never went back fishing deep. I go into the tournament with only 1 deep spot. Had I spent the second day looking for more areas to catch fish right there in that same area, probably would have had a different outcome. Here's the third and final thing that I would change if in the event that I could go back and redo this, and how I will adjust moving forward. I found an area on Sam Rayburn that had some really, really good hydrilla and a little bit of milfoil. And I did spend quite a bit of time fishing in that area. I spent about 4 hours the second day in this one area. Anytime you got grass, there will be bass. If there's grass in the lake, I can promise you there will be grass and fish in that grass. There's no questions asked. All right, what I would have, should have, wish I would have done on the second day of practice was swap up my rotation of baits. I stayed with that crankbait a long time, that cliffbanger, for a long time on the second day of practice, the red cliffbanger. Going back, I would have chosen a different lineup of baits. I wish I would have thrown a jerkbait a little bit more. Anytime the water is hovering in the 40s, low 50s, wintertime, grass, throw a jerkbait. I wish I would have slowed down and tried to fish a jerkbait around that grass. Also, the cranking that I was doing was perhaps a little bit too shallow. I was fishing 8 foot to 0 foot. I was throwing my cliffbanger 60. I threw a crankbait that we call the scamp around some of the shallower grass, but we have a bigger crankbait that I should have thrown, should have put more time in, that I could have got down to that 12 to 15 foot range, the cliffbanger 70. I should have thrown that. I should have found brush piles that were in 12 to 15 foot of water, those shallower brush piles, and I think I would have caught a little bit better quality and could have searched through some of these brush piles a lot faster than I could fishing the way I was fishing. I think possibly I could have also caught some fish on the outside of the grass lines, just throwing a Nico rig, something super simple. The fishing game's always simple. You don't have to do a lot to, it's only complicated because you're not catching them. But the bite is always simple. It's just when you don't know it or you're not connecting, you're not putting the pieces and reading the water good, it becomes very complicated. 1 + 1 is always gonna be 2. And fishing is always just as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. So I hope you guys enjoy this series of videos that I plan on doing on every tournament. Some tournaments that'll be good and we'll have good things to talk about. Other tournaments, maybe it won't be quite as good and we'll have some things that we need to figure out and adjust. We can always get better even when we win the tournament. Sometimes it's going to be better in our equipment. Sometimes it's going to be a better mental approach. Sometimes it's just going to be using different baits. Sometimes it's going to be nothing you could do about what happened at all, because that's what fishing really is. So let me know how you like this video. I hope it helps you guys out in your tournaments. One more thing that I do want to tell you is that I am going to dive a little deeper into showing you guys how exactly I caught the fish that I did catch on the first day. There was a lot of questions about the baits, the rods, the reels, the lines that I used to catch the fish that I caught, and how I found the deep fish that I did manage to catch on day 1 of the tournament. The next video, I'll go into deep detail on how you can find fish in your body and water 20 foot and deeper, using the baits that I use and the things and the setups that I like to use. All right, appreciate it. Thank you guys.